Today, we're also working for a transition so the Syrian people can have a better future, free of the Assad regime. Given the regime's stockpiles of chemical weapons, we will continue to make it clear to Assad and those around him that the world is watching and that they will be held accountable by the international community and the United States should they make the tragic mistake of using those weapons.
Both the minister and I saw eye to eye on the many tasks that are ahead of us and the kinds of contingencies that we have to plan for, including in the horrible event that chemical weapons were used, and everyone has made it clear to the Syrian regime that's a red line for the world.
It's one of the largest programs in the world. They have the early chemical agents that were used in World War I, like mustard, and they have some of the most modern.
We have, as you know, repeatedly made it clear that the Syrian government has a responsibility to safeguard its stockpiles of chemical weapons, and that the international community will hold accountable any Syrian officials who fail to meet that obligation.
I think if you look at what the administration does and says, it certainly responds to questions about chemical weapons when it has a press conference.
We know they have weapons of mass destruction. We know they have active programs. There isn't any debate about it.
We know that Saddam Hussein has a long history with terrorism.
We have facts, not speculations.
And we've been careful about what we've said, and what we've said has been exactly accurate.
There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction. There is no doubt that he is amassing them to use against our friends, against our allies, and against us.
But there's no doubt his hatred is mainly directed at us. There's no doubt he can't stand us.
Every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources. These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence.
Any country on the face of the earth with an active intelligence program knows that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction.
You know for a fact he moved these weapons to Syria.
Yes.
How do you know that?
I know it because I have got the captains of the Iraq Airways, they are my friend, and they told me that these weapons of mass destruction have been moved to Syria.
How did he move them, General? How were they moved?
They were moved by air and by ground. 56 sorties by Jumbo 747 and 27 were moved to, after they were converted to cargo aircraft, they were moved to Syria.
So I assume this would not have happened without the permission of Damascus, is that correct?
Well, of course, you know, when the aircraft will land in Syria, they must have some sort of agreement between the two.
So the Syrian government knows exactly where these weapons are today?
Now look, part of the reason we went into Iraq was, the main reason we went into Iraq at the time was we thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't, but he had the capacity to make weapons of mass destruction. But I also talked about the human suffering in Iraq, and I also talked the need to advance a freedom agenda.
In light of the fact that we did not find the weapons of mass destruction, the President still describes the war as a war of choice, a war of necessity rather than choice. Vice President Cheney said we would do the same thing all over again. Knowing what you know today, would you do the same thing all over again?
If we knew today, or knew then what we know today, that there were no weapons of mass destruction, I would have had nothing to take to the United Nations. The National Intelligence Estimate, which was the basis of my presentation, and, by the way, was the basis of the information that was given to the Congress that caused them to vote a resolution of support 4 months before my UN presentation. We rested our case on the existence of weapons of mass destruction that were a threat to us and could be given to terrorists, making it another kind of threat to us.
It would be madness to use chemical weapons inside closed urban areas. You'd get your supporters as well as these Al-Qaeda mercenaries. Like Yogi Berra used to say, this is deja vu all over again. I smell a rerun of the old Pentagon scenario. This is all a scenario. This is scripted. The RAND Corporation did the book on this, and the Pentagon put it into their how-to military manuals, and they're just toppling one regime after another to create their grand design.
Ça m'énerve.
على حي المشهد الجيش الحر يفجر مبنى بعد أن حصر 7 شبيحة في الحي.